Greetings comrades, my name is Gigantos, and in today's video I'm not going to talk about how I was arguing with people, but about the trip I went on last weekend with my volcanology course to look at volcanic rocks by the Slate mine. I can't remember what its name is, but basically I went on a field trip, and it was quite interesting for me because I've never been that far north. And I remember, because I didn't get much sleep the night before, I woke up at like 6 to prepare for this trip, and I slept a significant portion of the way there. And I woke up and I look outside and I just see these big hills in the distance. I'm like, oh, we're this far north, are we? And we continued going down a bunch of steep roads. I'm thankful that I didn't get motion sickness. That was a genuine concern of mine, but fortunately my stomach is settled. If there's one problem I hate being at university, it's that I'm not in cars often or moving vehicles, and because of that there is a genuine concern that my tolerance, because I can get motion sick unfortunately, and if I'm not in cars for a long period of time, my tolerance, you could say, to motion sickness reduces. So the last thing I needed was to get sick, but fortunately I didn't. And it was an interesting drive. We ended up driving through this flooded valley because of all the rain up there recently, and there was this really bright rainbow right next to us, and there was an inverted rainbow next to that one. Because if you've ever seen two rainbows in one place, you'll notice that the one on the outside is inverted. So instead of going from red on the outside and violet on the inside, it's this inverted one is violet on the outside and red on the inside. I believe I got that the right order. Anyway, so we continued driving. It was fairly cold, but I was prepared. I wasn't freezing like on my I wasn't freezing like on my Bristol trip or my Lulworth Cove trip. It was mostly dry too for most of the day. We went up, looked at a lot of rocks and sites, and we talked about the geological processes behind them. I noticed a lot of the students there, the students I was with, they didn't know too much about geology. They were there from physical geography, so I had to do a lot of the talking and trying to understand the rock processes. And at one point, my volcanology lecturer said to me, "Look, I think you're getting a bit too advanced with your explanations here. Just maybe slow down a little bit." So I did, but I brought back a lot of samples. I'm going to show you shortly. The main problem I did have with that trip was towards the end. You see, I was wearing a number of fabrics. It was my shirt, a short sleeve shirt like this one, so I didn't overheat. Over that, I wore a fleece, and then I wore my raincoat because it was like occasional short showers. But at the end of the trip, that's when the rain started coming in fast and heavy, and I was carrying several kilos worth of rocks, including a massive one in my hands that I will show you shortly. And because of that, I was overheating in all this clothing, and I must have looked really stupid. In order to avoid falling over carrying this rock, I had to lean backwards whilst trying to keep my face dry, whilst trying not to lose my footing as I was going down these steep hills and paths. And seriously, I must have looked like such an idiot, but I was busy stumbling along, trying not to fall. People were encouraging me, saying, "You can do it." I said, "I know I can." But I got down to the end, I ducked inside the gift shop and the restaurant, and I definitely took a few minutes to catch my breath, because although I have pretty decent stamina, but when you're carrying a rock as heavy as the big one I'm going to show you shortly, having to walk at an angle to avoid falling forwards, whilst also overheating from stumbling down hills for a while, it's quite tiring and hot. So also I didn't want to catch a cold or anything, so I had to make sure I was still covered up, and I was, and I used that opportunity to get some sleep on the way back. But I enjoyed the trip otherwise. I've got a lot of samples to show you. But I think the weirdest part about the trip was when I came back, because my university, my course for the trip, we left at around 9, and we came back at like 6 or something. And so I was waiting for the bus to go from my university campus back to my accommodation. And as I was waiting there were a whole bunch of freshers, or first years, or mostly first years, I believe. And they were there wearing stuff like, they're wearing like red clothing, and they had like red paint on their face like that. And they were all in these big groups talking loudly, saying, okay, we're going to get this bus, and then you guys get the next bus. And I was just standing there holding my rock in a bag, like, what's going on? And it was slightly uncomfortable, because to them I must have looked really weird, because I was in like my full camping gear. And I was wearing they wouldn't see my shirt. I was wearing like a fleece, and I was wearing my fleece and raincoat, which are open out to keep myself cool. I was in my grey hiking trousers. I was in my hiking boots. I had my neck scarf around my neck, which I had to pull up because of the cold sometimes. I had a big bag on, heavy rock sticking out the sides of it. I had a big heavy rock I was holding in my arms, wrapped up in a bag. So I must have just looked really weird to everyone. But it was a good trip. I enjoyed it. I definitely needed to sleep in the next day. Why we went on Saturday, I think it was because of weather concerns and also opportunities to actually go on field trips. But yeah, I'm just going to stop talking now and show you the rocks I have. Okay, so firstly, I would like to apologize for the poor lighting and the bad picture quality. I know I'm not exactly much of a photographer here, and I don't have much room, as you can see. I mean, over here's my desk, and over here's my bed. So if you see me walking in a funny way around here, that's why. There's not much room in this accommodation. It's not as big as my previous rooms, but I'm going to stop talking and show you my rocks, because that's why you're watching this. So the first rock I'm going to show you is this one, which it doesn't look like much, but basically this is from a quartz vein that was between two faults. No, it was on a fault plane. So the fault block, I need to use the correct terminology. Basically, there was a fault. One huge chunk of rock slid over the other, and it scratched the quartz vein that had appeared in the crack, and that's what these lines are. Over here, some clay, which is one of the reasons why I have to make sure I don't bump this against anything, because I don't want my accommodation to be dirty. But basically, a chunk of fault plane quartz vein with silicon fibers showing sub-horizontal movement, because the fault itself was at a slight angle, like that. So the rock slid up and down like that. There's this, which is this picture quality is terrible. There's this, which is basically a chunk of quartz that, similar to the silicon fibered one, it basically it was formed by hydrothermal fluids being squeezed into gaps in the rock and then crystallizing, and that's what the shiny fake quartz faces are. And you can see some of the original host rock, which is the darker stuff. By the way, the darker rock is volcanic. Then there's this one, which is the slate. Well, it's part of the slate, I think, because the way the slate mine had been affected by volcanology in the past was that a whole bunch of sediments from a lake were laid down, and then there were massive igneous intrusions, which partly I can't think of the right word now, but basically they melted a lot of the rock, which destroyed a lot of its original sedimentary structures and layers, and they left almost like this huge black mass of rock. And that's what this is basically. This is a chunk of a chunk of the volcanic rock, I believe. Yeah. No, sorry, not the volcanic rock. It's influenced by the volcanic rock, but it's originally sedimentary. You can see some of the layers here which are formed. And the reason why I said it was volcanic was because I saw these holes here, and I thought that this meant it was volcanic. It's not. But basically, these vesicles here, you get these tiny little holes. Can you see them? I hope you can. Okay, yeah, you can. Basically, these holes here, they were formed by gases escaping from the cooling volcanic rock, and they were going through the sedimentary layers above it. But then, due to the very fine-grained sedimentary structures, due to the fine-grained sediments, the air bubbles weren't able to escape, and so they solidified with the rest of the rock and became these vesicles. Okay, then this one, clearly there's two different types of rock here, and the reason why I'm showing you this is because I believe this is some of the volcanic rock here, this darker stuff, and then this paler stuff here is actually very fine-grained volcanic ash. And we were busy debating on what came first, the ash or the volcanic rock, because it seemed like some of the ash had been forced into some of the cracks in the volcanic rock, and it seemed to have deformed them slightly, which was really strange. So we were busy debating that. This is another shot of the volcanic rock and the volcanic ash. It was we actually found a lot of this ash. It formed almost like clay deposits in a bunch of the areas around the slate mine where it had fallen off. And at one point we saw this big puddle of water, and it was all like greenish, bluish, cloudy, and that was because of all the not dissolved. It was because of all the suspended volcanic ash being basically being disturbed by the rain, and it was just forming this big cloudy puddle. Okay, now here's a colorful lump of quartz. As you can see here, there's the original white crystals, followed by some of the original post rock, the darker stuff, and then some red, which is probably impurities from hydrothermal fluids that leaked out from the magma as it cooled, but it was nice to look at. I should have picked up a bigger sample actually. Here's some more of the volcanic rock with that's spilling clay everywhere, with some volcanic ash. I've got to be careful because this will crumble. And here's some strange quartz crystallization. So I think I showed you this before from a rock that I got at Charmouth Bay. I think this is very, very fine dogtooth twinning, dogtooth crystallization of quartz here. And then as you can see, there's different like levels of quartz crystallization. You have the original, so you have this level of crystallization, then you have the original rock, and then you have one layer of quartz crystallization, and then another one over here, and then some of the original rock, I believe, again on here, followed by another layer of quartz crystallization. So you could say, so I would say that this was originally one rock, and then a crack opened up, and then this filled with fluid and solidified, then it cracked open again, this side filled up with fluid, and this was originally part of another rock, it cracked, filled up with fluid, cracked, filled up with fluid. So this was really broken rock. Here's the sedimentary rock, I believe it is. Okay, sediment, maybe I believe some deformed parts, partly melted sedimentary rock. You can see the shiny rock over here, like the flat surfaces here, the ones with streaks on them. I know it looks like silicon fibers, like I showed you the other time, but I believe this is actually mica on this. So it's not actually silicon fibers, but you can tell it's mica because it looks like fish scales in certain areas. Here's some more of that volcanic rock, I believe. I gotta stop. I need to have more faith in myself here. But I chose it because on this side you can see more of these. They look like almost like fibers, don't they? But that's why I chose them. It looks very nice. These rocks here. Maybe not to a non-geologist, but they do. But I know the picture quality is bad. But let me just say that these do look nice in person. It's just that I don't have a professional camera. Sorry about that. Here's one of the bigger chunks I got. It's hard to see, but this is actually bluish green. and that's and if I turn it around, you can see some shiny areas on that. I believe there's more mica in there, and yeah, I think so, because you can see some shiny parts in there too. Man, this camera sucks. Yeah, dark blue, black, greenish, looks like fibers. Nice sample. Relating back to those fiber structures, there's more of them here. They look much shorter though. Okay, they may be at most a centimeter long, but it looks like it broke off, so it's possible this is part of something much larger. Maybe it's pseudo silicon fibers, not too sure. But it looks nice. It looks almost like hair, really, like frozen fur or rock fur. I don't know. Okay, so here's a huge chunk of rock, which has a lot of the volcanic ash in it, as you can see here. This pale stuff. It has some nice crystals in there. What they are, I'm not too sure right now. But there's some quartz over there too. You can really see how the ash. Yeah, it's interesting because you see like random chunks of rock floating like that. So it's possible that this belonged to an earlier eruption, and then a later eruption destroyed this layer, and then this like chunk of rock, like with other clasts, was transported to a specific location, maybe in like a pyroclastic flow, and then and it was surrounded by ash like this. It looks like these flowery structures crystallized after that, after it was deposited. So I'm guessing that these were just impurities. No, sorry, not impurities. These were just these were various minerals and stuff crystallizing out of the volcanic ash. But it looks nice. It's the biggest chunk of volcanic ash that I found. Sorry, I don't know why I keep moving the rocks over here. I should move them over there. Now I chose this rock because it has a huge amount of vesicles in them. Can I? Okay, you see all these dark holes here? Those are all vesicles, and there's actually a lot more that you can't see. I know. Can I focus? Okay, you can see that, right? You can see all those like little tiny little dark streaks and holes. Those are all vesicles from the volcanic rock, inside the volcanic rock clasts that solidified. And what we said happened, okay, what my lecturers and I said happened when we were interpreting this rock is that what happened was the rock, basically the volcanic rock, it was sent airborne during an eruption, and as it hit water, it basically cooled very quickly, which in some of the larger clasts where there was a lot of volcanic gas trapped, it caused the gases to basically start forming bubbles in the middle of the molten rock, and as the rocks cooled quickly, it caused the bubbles to basically solidify, and so all these bubbles would have contained gases in the original magma. And then for the grand sample is this one, which I don't want to put down on this table because it's I don't think it can hold the weight. It's going to topple over. But this is basically the biggest sample I have. You can see there's a huge amount of these vesicles in here. They're quite large. You can see them very clearly without me needing to zoom in. Can I turn it around? Oh yeah. More vesicles on this side, as you can see. Some of them are brown, some of them are black. I think the brown is just exposed vesicles, like it looks like the black stuff is almost like an oxide layering over them. Sorry, here's the camera. It looks like the black stuff is an oxide layering over them, and then and then when the black stuff is maybe broken off, such as through an impact, the brown stuff beneath is shown. So maybe it's a fresher surface. But yeah, there's a lot. Ow, it's heavy. There's a lot of vesicles in this. Some of them show orientation, as you can see, or some stretching. But that particular rock was a nightmare to bring back. Because of the shape of it, I can carry a weight like that fine. It weighs a few kilos, okay? But the shape of it meant that it was quite sharp, the edges, and it was digging into my fingers when I was carrying it. And because I had to carry, that was the one I carried in the bag. But when I carried it, why am I doing this? Yeah, I'll return to face now. Anyway, as I was saying, because of the weight of the rock, when I was, I'll just use my fingers. When I was trying to walk down the why I keep saying mountain? When I was trying to walk down the hills with the rock, because the path we were on was sometimes like this steep, I had to, when I was busy walking with it, I had to basically lean backwards like this, and to try and keep my center of balance to avoid falling over. But the problem with that was it meant I had to put a constant strain on my legs and back, because my legs had to basically half bend. Okay, they really can't do my legs like this, but my legs had to half bend to try and keep to try and help put the rock in my center of balance. And it was difficult to carry it, because there were two ways to carry this rock. The first way was to carry it like a baby, but the problem was the sharpness would be digging into my sides like that. It would be digging into my sides like this. And if I carried it any other way, which would be to basically carry it like a book, so you know how you carry a book under your arms. If I carried it like that on my front, it would dig into my fingers. So when I woke up the next day, I wasn't able to clench my fist properly on this hand because it was so sore, and I had a back pain and leg pain, but that's cleared up now. It's definitely not as bad as when I hurt my back trying to bring back all the granites and rocks from Cornwall last year. But you know what? I'm still glad that I brought those rocks back, and I'm glad I went on that trip, because before this, like I said before, I've never been that far north before, and whilst I know Cornwall and the south coast are good sites for geology, I've been to those locations quite a few times already, especially with my family on holiday, and I wanted to see something new, and that's definitely what going on the trip up north did. So, Honister Slate mine? I hope I got the name right. But I'm glad I went. I'm glad I got those samples back, and I'm sure my dad won't be too glad when he has to somehow carry that rock back in his car when I go home at the end of this academic year. But hopefully in future I'll be able to go on more trips and get more interesting samples back. And I don't know where I'm going to put those rocks when I get back home, but I'm glad I got a chunk of that in my I've got a few chunks of that on my windowsill now. So it was a good trip for me, a good week recovering too. Hopefully you all have a good weekend. God bless you all. See you in the next video, comrades. Until then.